Well, hello there, everybody. Tim Worm here, and we are doing the first unit in the Introduction to Piano and Music course, where I'll just introduce you basically the very first steps and very first concepts you need to understand to be able to play the piano well. So here we go. Let's not waste any time. So getting started learning on the piano, this is kind of a list of things that you need to learn. The musical alphabet, this is what we'll cover today. All this we'll cover today, by the way. Finger numbers, finding notes on the keyboard, note durations, that's how long you play the notes for. That's like your quarter notes and stuff, half notes and things like that. And then time signatures and measures, and then like a few practice recommendations to get the most out of your practice. So let's go on to the musical alphabet. So this is pretty easy to understand, but very important. The musical alphabet goes from A to G, just like the regular alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But then after that, it repeats. That's the most important thing to remember, that there are no H's or anything Q's or W's on the piano. You're just talking about A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And you want to, you'll find out later why this is important, you want to be able to say that forward, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you want to practice it saying backwards too, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, which may be difficult for you if you're just starting out, but you'll understand why when we start finding more notes on the keyboard. So finger numbers is another thing we're going to go over, probably the easiest to show you right here. So we have 5 fingers on each hand, and the finger numbers are 1 through 5. So you're not going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They don't go up to 10. You're only going to count them separately, 5 fingers on each hand. The most important thing to remember is that you're counting from your thumb, no matter which hand, to your pinky. Thumb is always number 1. Thumbs up for number 1. And then you have number 2, which is your pointer on each one. Number 3 is the middle. Number 4 is the ring finger on each one. And then 5 is always the pinky. So thumb is always number 1, and 5 is always pinky, and you're always going to count from 1 to 5 on each hand. I mean, now it might go out of order, but I'm just saying that when you're trying to figure out the what finger number you have, you're going to be counting from your thumb to your pinky. And then basically what that's used for is a lot of times music will tell you play an E with finger 3, and you'll know exactly what they're talking about, and that's really so you can play up and down the keyboard effectively. So it's really important to get a hang of this, right in the beginning, even though it's not too hard. Okay, and then let's practice, right? So here we go. So if I point to this finger, what finger is this? This one right here. That's going to be finger 4, right? What about this one? Remember, thumbs up for number 1. That's going to be number 1. Now we're going to do like 2 or 3 on the right hand. What about this one right here? Well, that's my pinky, right? So that's going to be finger 5. What about if I do like this one right here? Oh, well, that's thumbs up for number 1, right? And then, of course, you have number 3 and number 2. So just a little bit of practice there. The musical alphabet goes from A to which letter? It goes from A to G, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then what happens after that? H, I, J, K? No, it actually repeats from that. It goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like that. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. We have the notes on the keyboard. So when finding notes on the keyboard, it's important to remember that you want to find the note C. So you want to play, the way you find C, by the way, is the group of 2 black keys. You play those, and then you go down and to the left, and that gives you the note C. So you want to find all the C's you can on the keyboard first, and then you're going to find the notes either from counting up or down from C. So just like the alphabet, once you hit C, the one right after that's D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Pretty easy, right? Same thing with the other way. C, and then what's before C in the alphabet? B, right? A, G, F, E, D, C. So this is why I told you to learn your music alphabet forwards and backwards, is because sometimes you'll have to count down from C, so it's important to know that, forwards and backwards. So let's find some C's on the keyboard, right? What about this? Is this a C? Well, no, because what you do to find C is you find a group of 2 black keys, these 2. You take the 1 to the left, and you go down and to the left, and that gives you C. So it's always right before that group of 2 black keys. What about this one? Is this a C? Well, it is, right, since we have our group of 2 black keys here. So just remember that for the most part on the piano keyboard, we have a group of 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, all the way up. But a lot of times if you have a full-size keyboard, you'll notice that the very first one has a number 1. It's actually a little bit off the camera there. And that's just because the keyword begins with A. So that's just where the grouping starts with that. So just in case you do notice that, what's the deal with that 1? Group of 1, that's why. Okay, so just moving on, you want to find all the C's you can on the keyboard. I'm really good at it by now, but that's one of the first things you want to practice. Next, we're going to go into note durations. So a note duration is how long you're going to hold the note, and there's quite a few different kinds. There's actually 4 kinds for now, but there are more than this. We just do this to kind of avoid confusion. So here we go. So here's our first one. This is called the quarter note. It has a filled in head. So every note, by the way, has what we call a head, which is that filled in part, and then a stem, which is the thing pointing up and down. Kind of like a upside down flower, I guess. Although they do appear the other way, which we will see later. So anyway, if you ever see one with a filled in head and a stem, that's called a quarter note, and a quarter note is going to get 1 count. Moving on, we have the half note. What's the difference between this one and the last one we did? Well, this one now has an open head and then has a stem as well. And this one is going to get 2 counts. So really what you do, I should have said this with a quarter note. When you're counting with 1 count, what that means is you play the piano and you count to 1. 1. And that's it. 1. If you had a bunch of quarter notes in a row, it would be 1, 1, 1, 1. So they're relatively short. Now with a half note, 1, 2, you're going to hold it for twice as long. 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's a half note. Moving on, we have the dotted half note. It's called dotted half note, even though it's really, if you read from left to right, is half note dotted, right? That's how we would read English. But here you're reading the dot first and then to the half. It gets 3 beats. 1, 2, 3. Now you'll see the dot appear again in your music studies, and what the dot really does is it adds half of the note's value back to itself. So if you have the half note worth 2, well, what's half of 2? 1, right? Well, what's 2 plus 1? That's going to be 3. So that's why that equals 3. Okay. The next one and final kind of note for today is the whole note. So I mentioned most notes have a head and a stem. This is the only one that does not have a stem. So you know it right away. It's a little thicker as well than the half note. It's open, by the way. And that will hit 4 beats or 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if I had 2 right in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is very important to know, like the note durations, because that's what helps you make the rhythm of the song. Like if I had Jingle Bells, so that's 2 quarters, half, 2 quarters, half, quarter, 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 whole. So it's important to know those, but you'll understand as we go along. Okay, a measure, by the way, is the distance between each vertical line in a musical staff. So, sorry about that. Okay, so back to a measure. So a measure, by the way, separates each, like their vertical lines. Let me show you actually. Let me get one over here. So these are our measures here. So you see how the music is broken up into these little squares, and we actually have these lines here. Those are called measure lines or bar lines. And then the distance between them, that's your measure. Just like that. So there you go. Pretty easy. Don't mind my poor handwriting. So this whole box is your measure. And you have multiple of them. Like the song might be like 16 measures long, might be longer than that. So there you go. Just like that, there's measure 2, that box. So anything within that box is called a measure. Okay. Up, back again. Okay, here we go. So, and it's used to break up the song in segments. So if you didn't have the measure lines, it would get really complicated. It would be really hard to follow. So a time signature tells you how many beats are in each measure. So there's always a top number and a bottom number. The top number tells you how many beats are in that measure, and the bottom number tells you which note gets one beat. But for now, we're not really going to mess with that bottom number a lot. All of them will end in 4 for now. So I'm going to show you 3 types. Let's move this over a little bit without the squares there. The first one is 4/4. That's the first one written here. So if you notice, there is a, over here, there's a 4 on top of another 4. We call that 4/4. You say the first number first, and then the bottom number, top number, bottom number. 4/4. Now, what that tells you is that you can have 4 total beats in each measure, which remember is really that box created by the lines. So you have, oops, let me change that a little bit. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. Now, can I fit in another quarter note other than that? Well, no, right? Remember, a quarter note gets 1 beat. So the first beat in the measure, remember there's only 4 total, is taken up by that quarter note. Beat 2 is taken up by the second quarter note. Beat 3 and beat 4 taken up by the other 2 quarter notes. Now, you cannot go beyond that. You can't fit more beats in a measure than they're supposed to. And then for the most part, you'll find like a couple of exceptions later on, really one I can think of, where you won't have as many beats as it says in the measure. That's really for something called a pickup measure, but don't worry about that right now. So just remember that the top number tells you the total number of beats in that measure. So you could have, and then you could have any combination of those beats. So you could have, say, 2 half notes, right? 2 beats there, 2 beats there, 2 plus 2 is 4. So they have to add up to 4. And by the way, one thing I want to make perfectly clear is that you do not add them across the what we call the clef. So you notice there's the top one, top line there, and then the bottom line. So up here is the top, down there is the bottom. You will not add them across like that. You're only, or up and down, you'll only add them across. So you do it for the treble clef for the right hand, the top part, and then you do it for the left hand, the bottom part, separately. You don't add them together. Because some students I know when they start out say, oh, there's 8 beats total in that measure, and I guess there are if you count them, but keep in mind that you're playing those at the same time. So that's why you only do them across. Okay, or you can have 1 whole note, as I wrote there. Now, what if I change this? Like, what if I go here and I say, change time signature, and we change it to 3/4, right? Let me move this over. Now it says 3/4. Well, what did that change, right? The bottom number didn't change. So the bottom number basically tells us, by the way, a quarter note gets 1 beat, and we're going to keep it at that. I'm not going to explain any more than that because I don't want to confuse you. All of these time signatures in the beginning, you'll have the quarter note equaling 1 beat. But now what has changed? The top number, right? So that's how many beats we can have between each measure. So now we can only have 3. So 3 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3. You could have a dotted half note, right? We talked about that. That's going to get 3. What about a whole note? Let me put a whole note here. Oh, it let me do it, but is that correct? No, right? Because a whole note is going to get 4 beats, and we're only allowed to have 3. Now, just moving on. Let's go. Here we go. What if I change it to 2/4? Well, 2/4, we only have 2 beats in a measure now. So I can only really fit like 2 quarter notes, maybe a half note. No whole notes. No dotted half notes, because those are 4 beats and 3 beats respectively, and you can't fit those in the measure. So we'll talk more and more about time signatures as we go along. Okay, so here we go. It just says let's go over the different types. We already did this on the other page, but you can follow along with the PowerPoint to review those. So here's the review. So today we talked about the musical alphabet. Remember, it goes from A to G and repeats. You want to be able to say that forwards and backwards. So these are your practice tips. And then the musical alphabet, oh, we talked about that. Music notes on the keyboard. So remember, you want to be able to find C. That's probably one of the main things you want to do. So you find the group of 2 black keys, you go down into the left, and that gives you C. And then you want to be able to count and find notes by counting up from C. So you want to be able to know that D is right after that, and then you have E, F, G, and then H. No, actually it's going to be A. You can also memorize where all these notes in relation to the groups of 2 and 3 black keys. Like, keep in mind that D is right in the middle of the group of 2, E is to the right, F is to the left of the group of 3, G is in the middle of those first 2. So you can memorize them all where they are, or you can count up and down from C, which is probably what you'll end up doing, at least in the beginning, since C is so easy to find. So you want to be able to find C no problem. Maybe not quite as fast as I did, but you want to be able to find it within maybe 5 seconds. Okay, and then finger numbers. Remember, we have 5 fingers on each hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from thumb to pinky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we just talked about the time signatures. I don't think I need to review that because we talked about that like a couple seconds ago. So here's just basically what you want to do. You want to review your finger numbers, review your time signatures, review finding notes on the keyboard, and when playing and practicing the examples for the week, make sure you're hitting the correct note on the keyboard with the correct finger. So if it says finger 2 and you're supposed to hit a D with it, you want to make sure you're using that finger, that correct finger. Okay, I think that's it. And then normally if I was teaching this as a class, I would take questions, but if you do have questions in this course for Udemy, or for anywhere else you may be seeing this, whether it's on my website or wherever, feel free to leave them, wherever there's a comment section, and I will be more than happy to get back to you. So this has been Tim Worm, and thank you for taking my Introduction to Piano and Music course. More great videos on the way, of course. So thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you for the next lesson.